So blockchain can solve for some trust issues, but do we really face issues with trust every day? We're all online with Google and Facebook and LinkedIn and Instagram, and pretty much all of us have online presences to varying degrees. So to help us understand some of the concepts of digital identity and self-sovereignty, I'd like to introduce to the stage Andrew Weaver, who's Executive Director of Digital Identity New Zealand. Andrew has over 30 years of hands-on management, consultancy, and development experience in this area, built throughout New Zealand, Australia, Asia, and the Middle East, and he regularly consults the financial services industry. He's an active and enthusiastic supporter of community, social enterprise, and charity initiatives. Thanks, Andrew. Come on up.
Kia ora tātou. Ko remataka te maunga, ko te awa kairangi, te awa, no whakatiki ahau, ko Weaver toku whānau, ko Andrew toku ingoa. Kia ora, my name is Andrew Weaver. I'm, as has been said, the Executive Director of Digital Identity New Zealand. Firstly, I want to acknowledge this is an awesome crowd. And we're talking about identity and we're talking about recognition and those sort of things. One thing, I'm glad we're not talking too much about facial recognition. I need to call out there are some magnificent moustaches in the room. And I'm not quite sure if our facial recognition technology is quite up to identifying who you are based on those magnificent mows. So well done, those of you who are contributing to that. I'm going to talk a little bit about what Digital Identity New Zealand is, just to give some context to the work we're doing. It's an organisation which has been operating for just under a year now. We are an association of members. We're a not-for-profit association of members. Janine is part of the Blockchain Association. It's a sister organisation to Digital Identity New Zealand. And there's a FinTech association, there's Agritech, there's an AI forum, there's lots all sitting under the NZ Tech umbrella. The reason why Digital Identity formed about a year ago was a recognition amongst a number of different players in the industry, stakeholders if you like, that we need to be doing online identity better. If we think about the ways that we interact with our customers, particularly around onboarding and then ongoing management of those customers, we've got a hell of a lot of friction in our system at the moment. We're asking people to do a lot of things a lot of the time. We're repeating that activity and talk about trust. We don't trust, or we don't have the ability to share that information with each other because those mechanisms don't yet exist. So Digital Identity New Zealand is about trying to address some of those issues. It's all about collaboration. So it includes the technology companies, it includes large retailers in New Zealand itself as a member, as are several other organisations represented here, but also includes startups, innovators, people who are coming up with wonderful new technologies and solutions, as well as representatives from community groups from academia as well, because there's actually ethical and moral issues that we need to address as we face into this as well. We've got a few goals, and it's worthwhile just touching on them very briefly to give you some context. This isn't just as simple as having a common sign-in process for people. It's a lot more than that. One issue is to put people in control and ownership of their digital identity, and even that nuance. I'm sure Frith is going to touch on it because I've heard her speak on it before. Ownership is an interesting concept in this environment. But the principle here is that people have a right certainly to visibility and to some management and control over what happens with their personal information. There's an inclusiveness element, which is the second point up there around enabling people to participate. So recognising that not everyone has the same access, not everyone has the same geographical situation in terms of physical access, but also access to technology and the ability to interact with services as well. So making sure that we're not doing this just for an elite few, that we're recognising that we're doing this for the benefit of everyone in New Zealand, not just citizens as well. We need to think about people who might be immigrants, refugees, could be short-term travellers as well, any aspect where people are doing business with us. The third, which is really pivotal, and this is where we're doing a lot of work at the moment, is to empower businesses to innovate and participate with clarity around identity. This is about having a common set of rules and understanding about how we work together. and to the point of having interoperability. So we've got mechanisms to exchange and to trust what we're talking about as well. Without those sort of rails, we're all dealing with a whole lot of siloed information. Absolutely recognise the ability to improve productivity. That's not just from the customer point of view of how many people they have, how complex that sign-up process is, but also if you look at the compliance costs within organisations for managing data, for managing privacy, for managing if there's regulatory compliance around things like anti-money laundering and those sort of things, even privacy around European privacy regulations. Finding ways to reduce that compliance and productivity costs within organisations. And lastly, it's about adaptation. It's not about finding a solution which works now. It's finding a solution which can adapt over time, because technology is going to change, threats are going to change, opportunities are going to change. This is one of the reasons why we have innovators and startups in the room, because they're the ones who are bringing the different ideas and the different opportunities in front of us. However, as is a common theme today, we have an issue with trust. Customers are anxious, they've got levels of concern, and they want to see us provide greater levels of transparency and control when it comes to the use of their personal information. We did a survey early in the year, and this is reflective of this same sort of results you'll see all around the world. We've got nearly 80% of people we polled, this is over 1,000 people, that are concerned about the protection of their identity and their personal data when it's in the hands of organisations. That's a huge number. We asked a follow-up question around confidence in their ability to do something about that. And what we found that 1 in 20 felt that they were actually empowered to do something about that sense of being out of control of what's happening with their information online. And really interesting crossover here with some people feeling they knew what they needed to do. That's the 68%. They sort of had an idea about what they needed to do to protect themselves, but actually weren't given the opportunity. And 58% of people saying, actually, I'm not really sure. I'm not really sure what I need. This is interesting. Key barriers. Trust again. Now, I will talk about a precursor to trust, which is transparency. Now, this is the subjective question that was asked. So, talking about key barriers, talking about transparency, about data use. So 85% of people responded to that question and said that they are concerned. That is one of the barriers for them. It's lack of transparency about data use. Now, this is a subjective survey, like I say, but this is people's perceptions. So when they're dealing with you, 85% of New Zealanders, when they're dealing with you as an organisation, saying, actually, I don't know what is going on with my information. You're not telling me, or if you are telling me, it's buried somewhere in a terms and conditions document which is 70 pages long, or it's sitting on a website underneath somewhere that I'm never actually going to look. There isn't clarity over what's going on there. And this is the source of some of that anxiety, but it's also the source of some of the low trust, because there's a feeling that things are being done sort of in the background, in the black boxes. And when you touch on some of those, particularly the very old school marketing type approach of, oh, I know my data is being taken out there and I know it's being played back at me. That's some of the stuff that's coming up here as well. Oh, sorry, it was in the previous slide, around perceptions of people with, yes, I know my data is being used because I can see it come back at me. Janine talked about that as well. Now, what we've started to talk about is a paradigm shift. This is a concept that we picked up from a group which is Te Mana Rarunga, which is a Māori digital sovereignty group, a data sovereignty group. But it applies just as well to identity. And it's taking the concept of identity and giving it something more tangible and meaningful, talking about it as taonga. Now, I quite deliberately did a pipiha right at the beginning. Now, that's an exchange. That's an exchange of my personal information. I told you who I am. I told you where I'm from. And the way that is both given and received is with dignity and respect. And you could tell that from the way that you guys reacted. in talking about that. But how different is that from our online experience? To talk about Janine's apple and the dollar as well. How different is it? Why have we got such a disconnect between the real world and the digital world? And this is something that we need to address. And focusing particularly on the control and ownership. This is where the concept of self-sovereignty comes in. Some of that enabled by technologies like blockchain. The sentiment behind self-sovereignty is, I don't trust what's going on out there, so if you give me the ability to do it, then I'm more inclined to interact and to disclose more information. And taking that concept of identity as taonga actually changes the nature of our interactions. It changes the way people think about what they share, but as organisations, it changes the way that we consider how we are using that data. Are we treating it with respect? Are we treating it with dignity? Are we recognising where it comes from and valuing its source and actually dealing with it in that way? And a really interesting component of that that's emerging, and it's very particular to New Zealand, and Matt, I'm wondering whether this is a correlation to some of the sentiment that you saw in your research, was some community aspects of trust and whakapapa as well. So looking at genealogy information and how important that is in our Māori and Pasifika cultures, and that translating into some of the activity we see in the online world around trust and around our information being used. So there's implications of this for control, privacy and commercialisation. What we're seeing is a shift in paradigm and a shift in power. That power being shifted back to individuals and communities. And that's something that personally I see as a good thing. And I think generally that's a generational shift that we are seeing within our society at the moment. And we can actually be in front of that. We can be demonstrating the right way or a better way to do business. And a coalition like this is actually ideally placed to start demonstrating some of those values and building that trust as a result. Thank you.